This is a bullet from the musket brown bester. They are not made with 1,820s. Where did you find it? In the leg of this person. The man went into the cave and suddenly transferred 250 years to the future, where he discovered something unexpected for himself.
My name is Alex, and welcome to my channel.
Sarah lives on a farm with her son Henry and father Kelvin. Every day, they all work together on the site, growing environmentally friendly product for sale. A woman shows her son how to care for vegetables, and Kelvin comes up with fantastic stories to interest a boy in work. Once he goes to feed chickens and suddenly sees a strange man in the barn, whom he takes for the homeless. Henry runs into the house, and Sarah, grabbing a gun, goes to find out who climbed to their site. Having ordered the alien to go out, Sarah turns on the light, which impresses the man to the core. He even suggests that the woman is a witch, and the guy thinks that he hit his head because he does not remember anything about himself and considers her old maid-to-be as she wears pants. The woman sends Henry for her father while she continues the interrogation, but without waiting for him, he goes into the house herself. Henry recalls that the poor fellow is very hungry because he ate the raw turnip. And then Sarah carries a plate of stew to the barn and checks the head of the poor man. For wounds, the man seems like R.I.P., but does not remember his surname, although he is sure that the terrain is familiar to him. Kelvin suggests that R.I.P. is the son of a neighboring farmer who recently came from the army. The guy confirms that he served in the infantry regiment and participated in the battles. Soon a policeman named Ted comes to the farm, who offers to send him to the hospital and, taking this opportunity, invites Sarah to the opening of a new restaurant. To begin with, Ted takes Rip fingerprints from Rip and then brings it to the local clinic. There, a policeman finds out that there are no prints in any of the databases, and he is not listed in the lists of missing. Nevertheless, Rips are left in the ward at night. The next morning, a woman, as usual, is taken for business when a guy is entangled. He ran away from the hospital and decided to help her own household. Since he has no money, and he considers to pay for yesterday, dinner a matter of honor. The guy is surprised by the surrounding objects and asks if he was in paradise. But here Kelvin comes up with how to occupy an unexpected assistant. And he, with an enviable dexterity, begins to milk the cows, simultaneously amazed that the bacon can be made from turkey, and then offer his services for pruning trees. Sarah accepts his proposal because her employee quit. Ted comes later. He admits that he did not find any data on the guy, but offers to take him to the station. Sarah does not understand why, because if the guy is a veteran with PTSR, then the police are the last that he deserves. She intends to allow him to live in the farmer's house until he remembers who he is and where he came from. Although Ted does not like it, Sarah promises him to go with him to a restaurant on Saturday, and he leaves. Later, she finds data on the son of a neighbor on the internet, from which it is known that the guy was wounded and then awarded the order. R.I.P. confirms this, but he is so overgrown with hair that it is difficult to identify from the photo. The couple is lucky the guy to the local barber, where the R.I.P. scares the haircut machines. Sarah persuades him not to be scared, and soon they are convinced. Not at all like a neighbor's son. He claims that he fought with the British when a local expert on the history of Finster comes to Barbie Goop. Sarah immediately announces the guy as a reconstructor that he takes off all questions. However, hearing Finster's statement that he loves that period of history, the guy recalls that they fought against the counterparts and it was terrible. Do you want to say, did you like it? He later begins to work on the farm, and the woman raises the issue of payment and offers him to settle in the old farmer house. However, R.I.P., seeing the house, falls into excitement. After all, everything around is so familiar. He is sure that he grew up in this house, and, as proof, shows the cut letters and numbers on the pillar of his initials R.I.P. Van Winkle 2 and the date of birth, the 8th of the 8th of 1750-6 years. Henry calculates that in this case, he should be about 50 years old, but Rip assures that he is only 30-1 and faints, realizing that he was in the future. When he comes to his senses, Kelvin gives him a book by Washington Irving about Rip Van Winkle, and the guy claims that Irving was a boy who was constantly stirring in the tavern and listened to his father's stories. Although he himself considers his father a liar and a drunkard, and his story is a fable. He was born in this house, and he was baptized in honor of his Bada. Due to the constant quarrels with his wife, Van Winkle, the elder, left the house, and all the work on the farm fell on the guy. At 17, he was drafted into the army, where he had to participate in the Civil War. He was wounded, but returned to the farm, which allowed his family not to die of hunger. Time passed. The mother went into another world, and the sister got married. And once his father suddenly returned, who claimed to go hunting, but found a cave in which Brandy's bottle was. When he treated himself with this drink, a thunderstorm burst out above the mountains, and he fell asleep. And I slept for 20 years. Of course, it was absurd, and Rip decided to prove that his father lied. He went to the mountains and found this cave. What was his amazement when he found this bottle of brandy? At this time, a thunderstorm thundered over the mountains, and the guy decided to wait for her, swallow brandy, fell asleep, and when he woke up and left the cave, he saw this world and met Sarah. Kelvin suddenly believes the guy. From this day, R.I.P. has been working on the farm and helps the family with might and main. Once Henry returns home with a bruise, R.I.P. calls him for a conversation and finds out that one of his classmates is pushing the guy. Hello, freak. My Uncle Wellen says that you and your grandfather are no longer the most dumb in the city. Then he says that he saw a lot of battles and knows how to defend himself, and offers the boy help in training. Later, R.I.P. helps Sarah and Kelvin sell their products in a market, and the woman suddenly notices how interest her guarantee causes local ladies. This evening, a woman finds on the internet data on a doctor who successfully treats veterans with PTSD. Just at this time, he comes to her house and is amazed at the modern gadget. And then he talks about her toys and teaches a woman to play on the leaves of herbs, which is very amused by her. In the morning, they do all the work together, and then the guy teaches Henry to fight and is amazed at the ability of Sarah to handle modern equipment. And the woman rejoices in calm and happy days and evenings. She asks the guy about his loved ones, and he says that he had no time for serious courtship and was never married. Sarah admits that modern women put their careers above marriage and children, and this amazes him. He even recognizes the imperfect Declaration of Jefferson, according to which all men are equal, but not a word is said about women. Sarah tells him about the doctor and offers to go to New York to try to solve his problem. And Henry gives him a toy tractor and offers to imagine that real cars are the same toys. Then he will cease to be afraid of them. Before leaving, Sarah warns the guy that New York has changed a lot, so R.I.P. should not be scared. But he assures that he knows Broad One and not to scare him. However, seeing a modern metropolis, he first flows into a stupor, from which he is introduced by the laughter of Sarah. Later they come to a doctor who immerses the guy in a hypnotic dream. True, she does not understand what happened to him. It seems that he really went through the war, and this injury found a way out in creating a complex illusion. She had never seen this before, and therefore offers to conduct a complete study of the guy's body. Doctors find in his leg an old bullet from a musket, which are not made from 1,820s, and no one can explain this. After a visit to the doctor, the couple walks around the city. Sarah says that after the departure of her friend, whom she never married, although she was pregnant, she decided to leave the metropolis. Then her mother fell ill, and Sarah remained with her father on the farm. And there she thought that she could grow healthy food, and thus found a vocation. Sarah brings Rip to the observation deck, and he, peeing the city, concludes that the Americans did everything right because they achieved such a grandiose success. Later, the doctor admits that she could not find an explanation of his story and offers to discuss it with Dr. Silver, teaching quantum physics at the university. The couple comes to him, and he takes on the study of new material and is trying to explain the situation from the laws of quantum physics. Scientists suggested that time was moving only in one direction, but studying the behavior of the particles of uranium, they suggested that wormholes could appear in space, through which it can be penetrated at another time. But for now, it's all right. In theory, this wormer would lead to a bend or break during the landing of you, my friend. Rip later thanks Sarah for accepting him and helping in everything. He is worried that he will not fit into the new world, but with its help, his doubts retreat. Returning to the farm, they continue to live according to the established order. Once Ted comes to the house, who would like to treat Sarah with wine and barbecue, and the man becomes unpleasant when he sees Rip, although he behaves politely and educated. He admits Sarah that he did not find any data on the guy in the military archives. The city discusses its history, and many believe that R.I.P. is a fraudster. Sarah is tired of listening to him, and she escapes the guest. Arriving at the restaurant, Rip is amazed at the musicians without musicians. He dances with pleasure and then asks to play something romantic and invites her to a slow dance. Ted from his side watches a couple and understands that something is scolded between them, but still invites Sarah. At this time, Henry meets with his offender and for the first time dares to give him back, which amazes the classmate. Meanwhile, Finster sells antiquity objects, explaining what and how was done in the distant years. But R.I.P. ridicules his stories, because this is not at all what he thinks. The guy explains how certain weapons were used, and the man has to retreat. This is a children's toy. And she is broken. The family returns home to the enthusiastic stories of Kelvin, who cannot forget the confused Finster. Sarah puts his son to bed, while Rip hides the old man, who fell asleep in the chair. He's going to leave, and Sarah escorts him. It begins to rain when a woman catching up with a guy on the street and suddenly kisses him. And although his upbringing does not allow using the situation, they kiss in the rain that Ted sees. Time later, he knocks on the house of Rip. The policeman expresses his suspicions to the man, because he is sure that the fraudster who is preparing to use the poor woman to squeeze her farm. And he advises him to leave in a good way, because he loves Sarah and will give her what Rip does not have, although he has nothing at all. In the morning, the guy comes to breakfast, while a warning about a large thunderstorm is heard on the radio, because of which electricity was already turned off. He later does a job when Sarah and Kelvin leave for the store. When the couple returns, it is already raining over the farm. And then the man finds a farewell letter from a guy in which he asks for forgiveness for leaving them, since I am sure that they will be better without him. The family runs after, because he described in sufficient detail the path in the cave. But Kelvin becomes difficult to rise. Then Sarah hurries forward alone and finds the Rip inside. He talks about Ted's words, but the woman reminds that her business is to decide who and what can give her. Then R.I.P. asks her to become his wife. Asura agrees to go a couple of dates. They kiss when thunder rattles over the cave and the Rip bag disappears. The couple runs away. And in the past, Rip's father finds in a cave a bag with a notebook of his son, where he describes everything that happened to him, and asks his father for forgiveness for not being able to share love. R.I.P. and Sarah are returning home, where they are already waiting for Kelvin and Henry. In general, it is a bright and kind film about true love and life without hostility and hatred. And this is perhaps the main fantastic component of the picture. Do not forget to like this video and write in the comments how this film you like.